There's something about a Friday evening in late September that carries a different weight. The light has that golden hour quality, warm on the surface, but tinged with the kind of cold that reminds you winter's coming, whether you're ready or not. The roadside diner off. Route 9 had seen better days. Its neon sign flickered with the word open, though the O had given up weeks ago, leaving just pen blinking against the darkening sky like a distress signal nobody was reading. That's where Tommy had been waiting. Not inside where it was warm, not sitting on the bench near the Rees entrance. No, this 9-year-old kid had positioned himself near the edge of the parking lot, partially hidden behind a rusted newspaper vending machine that probably hadn't held actual newspapers since 2008. He'd been there for 47 minutes. I know because later, the waitress told us she'd noticed him when her shift started, thought about saying something, but figured he was waiting for a parent running late. She was wrong. Tommy wasn't waiting for a parent. He was hunting for something far more dangerous and far more desperate. He was hunting for hope in the form of men society had taught him to fear. The rumble started as a distant thunder, that deep, mechanical growl that announces a motorcycle before you can see it. Then it multiplied. 1 engine became 3, 3 became 7. By the time the Redeemer's MC rolled into that parking lot, the sound was a symphony of raw power, chrome and steel singing in perfect, terrifying harmony. Leading the pack was Marcus Reaper Stone, though I didn't know his name yet. What I knew, what anyone with eyes could see, was that this man was carved from a different kind of clay than the rest of us. 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle, leather, and ink. His black leather sleeveless vest bore the phoenix patch of the Redeemer's MC, the mythical bird rising from flames, stitched with a kind of precision that told you this wasn't just a club, it was a brotherhood. Both arms were sleeved in tattoos, stories written in ink from shoulder to wrist. But it was the skull tattoo on his left bicep that drew the eye, detailed, haunting, positioned right where you'd see it if he reached toward you. His face was weathered, not old, but worn by years of living hard and honest. A thick beard, dark with streaks of gray that added gravity rather than age. Eyes that had seen things most people only watch in movies. And his hands, his hands, knuckles scarred, fingers thick, the kind of hands that could crush bone or cradle a newborn with equal capability. They were resting on his handlebars as he killed the engine, and for a moment, the world went quiet except for the ticking of cooling metal and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. That's when Tommy moved. I watched this kid, and that's what he was. Just a kid step out from his hiding spot with the kind of courage that only comes from having absolutely no other choice. His clothes hung off him like hand-me-downs that had been handed down one too many times. Jeans, with frayed cuffs, pooling over sneakers held together more by hope than stitching. A jacket 3 sizes too big, sleeves covering his hands except when he moved, and then you could see it. The purple-yellow bruise wrapping around his forearm like a bracelet nobody would choose to wear. But it was his face that told the real story. A fresh cut above his right eyebrow, scabbed over but recent. Eyes too old for a 9-year-old, carrying the kind of awareness that comes from constantly calculating danger. And in his right hand, clutched so tight his knuckles had gone white, was a crumpled $10 bill that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. Marcus had just taken off his helmet, a matte black half-shell that left his face exposed when Tommy approached. The other bikers were dismounting, stretching road-weary muscles, talking about what they'd order inside. They'd just finished a charity ride for veterans, raised 15 grand for the VA hospital 2 counties over. They were in good spirits, ready for burgers and coffee, and the kind of easy camaraderie that comes after a long ride for a good cause. Then this kid materialized in front of Marcus like a ghost. For a moment, maybe 3 seconds, that felt like 30 nobody, moved. Marcus looked down at Tommy. Tommy looked up at Marcus. And I swear you could see the calculation happening in that child's eyes. I've made a terrible mistake warring with, this is my only chance. Marcus's voice, when it came, it wasn't what you'd expect from a man his size. It wasn't a growl or a bark. It was quiet, measured. The kind of voice that made you lean in to listen rather than flinch away. You lost, son? Tommy shook his head. Not lost. Very much found. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Words seemed to be fighting their way through his throat like they were swimming upstream. And then, with his arm extended, that $10 bill shaking in his trembling hand like a white flag of surrender. He said it. Mister, this is all I have. I know it's not enough, but .canu? Please come to my house tonight and just stand outside. My mom's boyfriend gets real mean when he drinks, and he gets paid on Fridays. If he sees your motorcycle outside, maybe he won't hurt her this time. I just need him to see someone bigger than him. Please. This is all my birthday money. The parking lot went silent. Not quiet silent. The kind of silence that happens when the universe itself holds its breath. The other bikers had stopped mid-conversation. A car pulling in stopped its approach, as if even strangers could sense the gravity of what was happening. Marcus didn't take the money and pre-sum. Instead, he did something that somehow made the moment even more devastating. He lowered himself down this mountain of a man until he was on one knee, eye level with a 9-year-old boy who was trying not to cry. His hands, those scarred, massive hands, stayed at his sides. Non-threatening, open, waiting. Son, where's your dad? That's when the dam broke. Not with sobs or wailing, but with something worse, the quiet, contained grief of a child who's learned that crying doesn't fix anything, but still needs to let the truth out. He died 2 years ago. He was a Marine. He would have never let anyone touch us. But now, there's nobody. Dale says, bikers are just criminals. Anyway, so I thought. I thought maybe you guys don't care about the rules. Maybe you'd help even if the police won't come until it's too late. And there it was. The plea, the cry for help, wrapped in the logic of a desperate child who'd exhausted every option society said he should try first. He'd called the police. They said they'd send someone when they could. But Friday nights are busy. He'd tried child services they'd investigated. But Dale cleaned up nice, charmed the caseworker, and the report came back inconclusive. He'd told a teacher who told him to keep documenting and stay safe, as if a 9-year-old could do either without help. So Tommy had saved his birthday money. $10 from his grandmother, who still sent cards, even though his mom said they couldn't afford to visit, and he'd waited in a parking lot for men in leather who looked like the kind of people his school warned him about. Because sometimes, when the system fails, when the good guys can't help fast enough, when the rules protect the abuser instead of the abused, sometimes you need someone who operates outside those rules. Marcus looked at that $10 bill like it was a grenade. Then he looked at Tommy. Then he looked over his shoulder at his brother's 6 men who'd just stopped breathing, who'd gone from relaxed to coiled in the span of 30 seconds. When Marcus stood back up to his full height, something had shifted. You could see it in the set of his jaw, in the way his shoulders squared, in how his hands, which had been loose and easy, now clenched once, twice, then forced themselves to relax. Keep your money, son. What's your name? What's your name? Tommy. All right, Tommy. You're going to tell me everything. And then you're going to show us where you live. Here's what Tommy told us. Standing in that parking lot, while 7 bikers formed an unconscious protective circle around him, his voice was small, but steady. The kind of steady that comes from rehearsing something over and over because you know you'll only get one chance to say it right. His mom's name was Sarah, 34 years old, worked double shifts as a nurse's aide at the county hospital. Tommy's dad, Staff Sergeant David Parker, had died 2 years ago in a training accident at Camp Lejeune. No combat deployment, no heroic firefight, just a routine exercise gone wrong. One moment he was there, the next he wasn't, and Sarah was left with a folded flag, a 9-year-old son, and a grief so heavy it made breathing feel like work. She'd held it together for 18 months, got Tommy through the worst of it, kept the house, maintained her job. But grief is expensive, not just emotionally, but financially. The insurance payout was decent, but not never work again decent. Medical bills from David's final weeks piled up. The VA benefits were helpful but slow. And somewhere in that fog of trying to keep her head above water, Sarah had met Dale Hoffman. Dale had seemed like an answer at first, charming, attentive, quick to help with repairs around the house. He'd been an amateur boxer in his 20s, never made it pro, but fought enough local circuits to know how to throw a punch and take one. At 42, he still carried himself like a fighter. Broad shoulders, thick neck, hands that had broken noses and ribs and orbital bones. But when he smiled at Sarah, Tommy said, he looked almost gentle. Like maybe he could be a good man if someone just gave him the chance. That lasted 3 weeks. The first time Dale raised his voice, Sarah told herself everyone has bad days. The first time he punched a wall, she told herself it could have been worse, at least it wasn't her. The first time he grabbed her arm hard enough to leave fingerprint bruises that she covered with long sleeves at work, she told herself she'd leave after the holidays because Tommy deserved one more normal Christmas. But abuse has a way of moving goalposts. After the holidays becomes after he gets that promotion, becomes after things calm down, becomes I can't leave because what if he follows us, becomes I can't leave because where would we even go? Dale moved in 3 months ago, officially, to help with expenses, but really because it's easier to control someone when you're always after. There. He didn't pay rent. He drank most of his paycheck construction work when he could hold a job, but lately he'd been between opportunities, which is a polite way of saying fired for showing up hungover or not showing up at all. Friday nights were the worst. Tommy learned the pattern fast. Dale would get paid around 4 p.m., cash his check at the liquor store that doubled as a check cashing place, buy a bottle of Jack Daniels, and roll home around 8 p.m. with that particular kind of drunk confidence that turns mean when challenged. The later he came home, the worse it got. If he showed up at 8, maybe you just get yelling and thrown dishes. If he showed up at 10, someone was getting hurt. Last Friday, exactly 7 days before Tommy found us, Dale had come home at 10:47 p.m. Tommy knew because he'd been watching the clock, listening to his mom in the kitchen pretending to be busy, both of them moving through the house like prisoners counting down to an inevitable execution. Dale had been in a mood. Someone at the bar had said something, 18, or maybe no one had said anything, and that was worse. He'd walked in already angry, already looking for a target. Sarah had tried to deflect, asked about his day, offered to make him something to eat. Wrong move. Dale said he didn't need her to mother him, that she was always in his face, that she was lucky he put up with her and her damaged kid. When Sarah defended, Tommy said, "Don't talk about him like that." Dale had grabbed her by the wrist. The same wrist she'd hurt 2 weeks earlier when Dale had playfully twisted her arm behind her back until she'd screamed. It hadn't healed right. She'd been splinting it at work, taking ibuprofen like candy, telling coworkers she'd slipped on ice even though it was September. Dale squeezed. Tommy heard his mom gasp, then try to muffle it because showing pain only made Dale feel more powerful. Then Dale said something that made Tommy's blood run cold. "One of these days, Sarah, I'm going to stop being nice, and you're going to learn what real consequences feel like." Then he'd punch the wall. Not wild, not out of control, precisely, deliberately, right next to Sarah's head. Close enough that she felt the air displacement, close enough that drywall dust landed in her hair. Close enough that the message was crystal clear. This could be your face. Tommy had watched from the hallway. 9 years old, paralyzed, useless. His dad had been a Marine. Tommy had inherited photo albums full of a man who dedicated his life to protecting people. And here was Tommy, frozen in a hallway, unable to protect the one person who mattered most. After Dale passed out on the couch, even Lund Tramling Panis incesses Evelyn, Tommy had helped his mom ice her wrist. She'd tried to smile, told him everything would be okay, used all the words parents use when they're lying to make their kids feel better. But Tommy wasn't stupid. He'd seen the fear in her eyes. He'd heard Dale's words. And that morning, while getting ready for school, Tommy had overheard Dale on the phone with someone, probably another drunk friend, enabling another drunk friend. "I'm done with warnings, man. Tonight I'm going to make it crystal clear who's in charge. She needs to learn some respect." Tommy told his teacher. The teacher called child services. A caseworker came to the house that afternoon while Dale was out. Sarah, terrified of what Dale would do if he found out she'd snitched, had downplayed everything. Said the wrist was an accident. Said Dale was stressed but working on it. Said things were fine, really. They'd just been going through a rough patch. The caseworker overworked, underpaid, juggling 40 cases when she should have had 15, had noted home environment adequate and moved on. Tommy had called the police twice. First time, they'd said they'd send someone when a unit was available. 3 hours later, no one came. Second time, the dispatcher had been sympathetic but explained that without an active incident, without visible injuries, without Sarah willing to press charges, there wasn't much they could do. Call us when something happens, she'd said, as if when wasn't the problem, as if waiting for when wasn't gambling with his mother's life. So Tommy had formed a plan. A 9-year-old's plan, desperate and illogical, and heartbreakingly sincere. He'd taken his birthday money, the $10 bill his grandmother had sent in a card decorated with superheroes, because she still thought of him as the little boy he'd been before his dad died. He'd looked up motorcycle clubs near me on the school library computer. He'd seen that the Redeemers MC was doing a charity ride ending at this diner, and he'd waited, because if the police wouldn't come in time, if child services couldn't help, if his mom was too scared to leave, then maybe, just maybe, the kind of men society said were dangerous could use that danger for something good. It was now 7:14 p.m. Dale got paid at 4. If he followed pattern, he'd be home by 8, maybe 8:30, if he stopped for more than one bar. Sarah was home alone right now. Probably cooking dinner she wouldn't eat, probably checking the clock every 5 minutes, probably wondering where her son was, and adding that worry to all the others she already carried. Tommy's voice cracked when he said the next part. She has a sprained wrist. She can't defend herself, and he's been getting worse every week. I think tonight he's really going to hurt her, and I can't stop. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. But maybe if he sees you guys. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. The equation was simple and devastating. One 9-year-old boy plus his injured mother, minus any functional support system, divided by an abuser who'd promised to escalate equals a child standing in a parking lot trying to hire protection with his birthday. Money. Marcus didn't say anything for a long moment. He just looked at Tommy with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something between fury and heartbreak, between determination and devastation. Then he looked at his brothers. No words were needed. 6 men nodded. 6 men checked their watches. 6 men started moving toward their bikes with the kind of purposeful calm that's more terrifying than rage. Marcus turned back to Tommy and spoke in that quiet voice, the one that didn't need volume because the weight of it was enough. Tommy, here's what's going to happen. You're going to ride with me. We're going to your house, and we're going to make sure your mom is safe. Not just tonight, not just until Dale sobers. Up. Safe. Period. Do you understand? Tommy nodded, tears streaming down his face now. The kind of tears that come from relief so intense it physically hurts. And Tommy, you don't ever, and I mean ever, have to pay someone to keep you safe. That's what men are supposed to do. That's what we're here for. Your dad would have done the same for any of our kids, so now we do. It for his. One of the other bikers, a man called Ox, who lived up to his name, pulled out his phone and made a call. I found out later he was calling a friend who worked at the sheriff's department, giving him a heads up that the Redeemers MC was about to show up at a domestic situation and that, while no one was planning violence, it would be real convenient if a patrol car happened to be in the area around 8 p.m., just in case Dale needed an extra incentive to walk away. Another biker nomad, who'd been quiet until now, asked Tommy for his address. Then he texted it to someone. My sister, he explained to Marcus. She's a social worker. She'll fast-track a real investigation, one that doesn't take everything's ass. Fine for an answer. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a coordinated operation. These men, these criminals, society had taught Tommy to fear, were mobilizing with military precision to protect a Conference 5 woman and child, the system had failed. Marcus helped Tommy onto the back of his bike, made sure the kid's arms were secure around his waist, told him to hold on tight and trust the ride. 7 engines roared to life simultaneously, and the sound was no longer threatening. It was a promise, a battle cry, a declaration that said, "We're coming, and hell's coming with us." As we rolled out of that parking lot, Tommy's small frame pressed against Marcus's back, his arms wrapped tight around a man he'd met 20 minutes ago. I realized something profound. "Cesar man, see he have I have the best on space." Sometimes the scariest looking people are scary for a reason, because they scare the things that deserve to be scared. Dale Hoffman had no idea what was about to roll up to his house, but he was about to learn a lesson. They don't teach in boxing rings. There's always someone bigger. And tonight, 7 someones were coming for him. But before we see what happens next, if you're feeling this story, hit that subscribe button. We post stories like this every week, real talk about people who show up when it matters. And drop a comment below, tell us where you're watching from. Are you Team Redeemers? The ride to Tommy's house took 11 minutes. 11 minutes of Tommy's arms wrapped around Marcus's torso like he was holding on to the last solid thing in a collapsing world. 11 minutes of 7 motorcycles moving through suburban streets like a mechanized cavalry. 11 minutes for Dale Hoffman to finish his 4th drink at McReady's bar and decide it was time to go home and set things straight. Tommy's house was a small ranch-style home on Maple Drive, the kind of street where American flags hung from porches and neighbors knew each other's names. White siding that needed a fresh coat. A driveway with cracks spiderwebbing through the concrete like frozen lightning. A mailbox with Parker still stenciled on the side because Sarah hadn't gotten around to changing it. Or maybe she couldn't bear to. When your husband dies, sometimes you hold on to the little things because the big things hurt too much to touch. The front window glowed with warm light. I could see movement inside a woman's silhouette passing through what must have been the kitchen. Sarah. Tommy had said she'd be cooking dinner she wouldn't eat, and there she was, going through the motions because routine is sometimes all you have when everything else is chaos. Marcus killed his engine. 6 others went silent in sequence. The sudden quiet was louder than the roar had been. It was the sound of something about to happen, potential energy coiled and waiting. Tommy slid off the bike, legs shaky, and Marcus steadied him with one hand on his shoulder. "Which house, Tommy?" "That one." "Number 42. Marcus nodded, then turned to his brothers. His voice was low, controlled, every word deliberate. "Ox. Nomad, you're with me. Hawk. Stone. Take the backyard. Wrench. Diesel, stay with the bikes and keep eyes on the street. Our friend Dale drives a..." He looked at Tommy. "Blue Ford F-150. Older. Has a dent in the passenger door. Blue F-150. Dented passenger door. He shows up. We give him a welcome committee. Nobody touches him unless he swings first. And even then, we restrain, we don't retaliate. We're not here to beat anyone. We're here to scare the living hell out of him and make sure he understands that his reign of terror just ended." 3 men moved to the backyard, disappearing into shadows like they'd done this before. Maybe they had. The Redeemers MC had a reputation not for violence, but for showing up when someone needed muscle between the vulnerable and the predator. They were the unofficial security system for people who'd fallen through society's cracks. Marcus walked up to the front door with pen psalm, Tommy beside him, and knocked. Not aggressive, not soft, just firm. The kind of knock that says, "I'm not going away." The movement inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The porch light flicked on, and then the door opened 6 inches, held by a chain lock that wouldn't stop anyone determined, but made people feel safer anyway. Sarah Parker looked through that gap and saw her son standing next to a man who looked like he could bench press a small car. For one terrible second, her face went through every worst-case scenario. Tommy's been kidnapped. Tommy's in trouble. Tommy's. "Mom, it's okay. They're here to help." The chain rattled as she fumbled it open. The door swung wide, and Sarah pulled Tommy into a hug that was equal parts relief and confusion and fear. Over his shoulder, her eyes met Marcus's, and he saw what Tommy had described: a woman running on empty, held together by willpower and worry. Her left wrist was wrapped in an ace bandage, the kind you buy at CVS when you can't afford the ER. "Mrs. Parker, my name is Marcus Stone. Your son found us about an hour ago and told us you might need some help tonight. Is Dale Hoffman here right now?" The way Sarah's face changed when she heard Dale's name told Marcus everything. It wasn't just fear. It was the exhausted, defeated kind of fear that comes from knowing something bad is coming and being powerless to stop it. He's at the bar. He'll be home soon, Tommy. You shouldn't have." She looked at her son, and her voice cracked. "Baby, what did you do?" Quote, "I got help, Mom. Real help." That's when Sarah started crying. Not hysterical sobs, just quiet tears that came from somewhere deep, from a place where she'd stored all the fear and shame and exhaustion she couldn't show her son. Marcus stepped back, giving her space, but his presence was a wall between her and whatever was coming. "Mrs. Parker, with your permission, we'd like to be here when Dale comes home. Not inside, we'll stay outside. But we want him to see us. We want him to understand that you and Tommy aren't alone anymore." Sarah looked at this stranger, this massive, tattooed, leather-clad stranger her 9-year-old had brought home, and something in her broke and healed at the same time. She nodded. Couldn't speak, just nodded. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. Put it on speaker so Sarah could hear. "Deputy Chen." "Hey, it's Reaper. We're at 42 Maple Drive. Domestic situation. Woman and child in danger from abusive boyfriend who's expected home within the hour. We're providing presence, but I wanted you aware in case things escalate." "Copy that. I'm 10 minutes out. I'll park down the street. If he shows up drunk and tries anything, I've got probable cause." Marcus looked at Sarah. "That's Deputy Chen. Good man. He'll be nearby." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you." The next 23 minutes felt like hours. Marcus and two of his brothers positioned themselves on the front lawn, visible under the streetlight, a clear message to anyone approaching. This house is protected. 3 more were in the backyard. 2 stayed with the bikes. The formation was tactical, professional, impossible to miss. Sarah sat on the porch steps with Tommy, wrapped in a blanket one of the bikers had pulled from his saddlebag. Marcus stood 15 feet away, arms crossed, a statue made of muscle and leather and absolute determination. He didn't make small talk, didn't try to comfort her with platitudes, just stood there, a human shield, waiting. At 8:47 p.m., headlights turned onto Maple Drive. A blue Ford F-150 with a dented passenger door rolled down the street at exactly the speed of someone who'd had just enough drinks to be dangerous, but not enough to be sloppy. The truck slowed as it approached number 42, as if Dale's alcohol-fogged brain was processing something unusual. 7 motorcycles lined up at the curb, 7 bikers positioned around the property, 7 sets of eyes locked onto his approaching vehicle. The truck stopped in the middle of the street. Engine idling. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Dale pulled into the driveway, and I could see his face through the windshield confusion, morphing into anger, morphing into something that might have been fear if he'd been sober enough to recognize it. Dale killed the engine, sat there for 10 seconds, 20, 30. You could see him thinking, calculating. Then his door opened, and he stepped out. Dale Hoffman was exactly what Tommy had described. Former boxer, broad-shouldered, thick-necked, the kind of man who'd spent his life using his size to intimidate smaller people. He was wearing a work jacket and jeans with concrete dust on them, smelled like whiskey from 15 feet away. His eyes were glassy, jaw set, hands already clenching into fists, his default posture when confronting anything. "The hell is this? Sarah, who are these?" He started toward the porch, and Marcus moved. 1 step. That's all it took. Marcus moved 1 step to the left, positioning himself directly in Dale's path, and Dale stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. Because here's the thing about bullies, they know how to pick targets. Dale had spent 3 months terrorizing a 110-pound woman and a 9-year-old boy because they couldn't fight back. But Marcus Stone was 6'4", 240 pounds, and looked like violence personified. Marcus didn't yell, didn't threaten, just spoke in that quiet voice, the one that made you pay attention, because volume wasn't necessary when the message was clear. Dale Hoffman, my name's Marcus Stone. These are my brothers. We're the Redeemers MC, and we're here because a 9-year-old boy tried to hire us with his birthday money to protect his mother from you. Dale's face went through a series of expressions: anger, confusion, defensive posturing. He tried to puff up, make himself bigger, use the tactics that had worked on smaller opponents. This is my house. You're trespassing. I'll call it's Sarah Parker's house. Her name on the deed, her husband bought it before he died serving his country. You've been a guest here for 3 months, and you've abused that privilege. Also, you should know Deputy Chen is parked 3 houses down. He's been listening to this entire conversation. As if on cue, a patrol car's lights flickered on down the street. Not approaching, just present. A reminder. Dale's bravado cracked. Not shattered men like Dale don't shatter on first impact, but cracked. His eyes darted between Marcus, the other bikers, the patrol car, Sarah and Tommy on the porch. Sarah, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them we're fine. Marcus didn't look away from Dale, but his voice carried to the porch. Mrs. Parker, also Caraglace that, in Agenzen Intensigrain, you don't have to say anything you don't want to say. This is your call. Sarah stood up, slowly, like someone testing new legs after years of being unable to walk. She looked at Dale, this man who'd made her afraid in her own home, who'd made her son feel powerless, who'd taken the sanctuary she'd built with her late husband and turned it into a prison. Get out, 2 words, quiet but solid. Sarah, don't be stupid. Where am I supposed to get out? Get your things and get out of my house. Tonight. Dale looked at Marcus, searching for an opening, some angle to work. Marcus's expression didn't change. Didn't need to. His presence was the message. Try something. Please. Give us a reason. Behind Marcus, Ox had moved closer. 6'5", 260 pounds, arms crossed, tattoos covering every inch of visible skin. On the other side, Nomad had emerged from the shadows, leaner but no less intimidating, with eyes that had seen things and wasn't impressed by weekend warriors who beat up nurses and children. Dale was surrounded. Not physically, there was still space, still the illusion of freedom, but psychologically, he was boxed in by men who operated on a different level. He could throw a punch, sure, but then what? 7 against 1? And that patrol car watching? And Sarah finally saying what she should have said months ago? Dale's shoulders slumped. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. Because bullies are, at their core, cowards. They need the power imbalance. When the balance shifts, they fold. Fine, I'll get my stuff. You've got 15 minutes, we'll be right here. Watching. Dale stormed into the house, and Marcus followed not inside, but to the doorway, where he could watch Dale's every move. The other bikers maintained their positions, a perimeter of protection that said, this woman and child are under our watch now. 12 minutes later, Dale emerged with 2 duffel bags stuffed with clothes, toiletries, whatever he could grab in his rage and humiliation. He threw the bags in his truck bed with more force than necessary, a child's tantrum in a man's body. He paused at his truck door, looked back at Sarah one more time. Maybe searching for weakness, for an opening to exploit later. But Sarah stood tall, or as tall as someone 5'4" can stand with her son, beside her and 7 bikers, making it clear that later wasn't going to work out for him. Dale. One more thing. Dale turned. And Marcus closed the distance between them until they were face to face. Marcus was taller, broader, scarier in every measurable way. When he spoke, it was barely above a whisper, but every word landed like a hammer. If you come back here, if you call, if you text, if you drive by, If you so much as think about Sarah or Tommy Parker, we'll know. And next time, we won't be this polite. Do you understand me? Dale nodded. No words, just a nod. Then he got in his truck, started the engine with hands that were shaking slightly, and drove away. The taillights disappeared around the corner, and for the first time in 3 months, Sarah Parker's driveway didn't have a blue F-150 sitting in it like a threat. Deputy Chen pulled up in his patrol car, had a brief conversation with Marcus, took statements from Sarah and Tommy. He'd file a report, make sure there was a paper trail in case Dale got brave later. But for tonight, the crisis was over. 7 motorcycles, 45 minutes, 0 punches thrown, 1 abuser removed, 1 family protected. Not through violence, through presence, through the understanding that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a fist, it's 7 men standing between a predator and his prey, saying not anymore, never again. After Deputy Chen left, after the patrol car's taillights disappeared down Maple Drive, after the adrenaline started to wear off and reality set in, Sarah Parker sat on her porch steps and cried. Not the quiet, controlled tears from earlier, these were the deep, shaking sobs of someone who'd been holding their breath underwater for 3 months and finally broke the surface. Tommy wrapped his arms around his mom, and Les Trenzo stood down, and she held him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. Marcus and his brothers didn't leave. They didn't hover, didn't intrude, just remained present. A silent promise that the protection didn't end when Dale's truck disappeared. After a few minutes, Sarah wiped her eyes and looked up at Marcus. Her voice was raw, exhausted, and I need to today, but there was something new in it. Something that sounded like hope. I don't know how to thank you. I don't have money. I can't pay you. Tommy gave you everything we had, and it wasn't even Mrs. Parker, stop. We're not here for money. We're here because your son had the courage to ask for help, and because his father served his country, and because it's what decent people do when someone needs them. Nomad stepped forward, phone in hand. My sister, the social worker I texted earlier, she's filing an emergency protective order first thing Monday morning. It'll be official. Legal. If Dale violates it, he goes to jail. No questions asked. Ox added. We also took the liberty of changing your locks while Dale was packing. Hope you don't mind. Hawk used to be a locksmith. Old keys won't work anymore. He held out 2 new keys on a simple clutter. Ring. These are yours now. Sarah stared at those when questions. Assam 710 Sabaroun. Keys. Like they were made of gold. Because in a way, they were. They were the physical representation of something she'd lost 3 months ago. Control over her own home. Her own life. Marcus pulled an envelope from his vest pocket. This is from the club. It's not much, just $500, but it should cover groceries. Any bills Dale left unpaid. Maybe some new clothes for Tommy since he's probably outgrowing everything. I can't accept. You can. And you will. Consider it an investment. We invest in people who deserve better than what life's handed them. Wrench, who'd been quiet this whole time, spoke up. I know a guy runs a hardware store. He owes me a favor. I'll have him install a security system. Cameras, motion lights, the works. No charge. Give you peace of mind. One by one, these men, these supposed outlaws, these dangerous bikers society had taught Sarah and Tommy to fear, offered pieces of themselves. A phone number, if you ever need anything, day or night. A promise to drive by the house every few days just to make sure everything's good. A connection to a women's shelter that offered free counseling when you're ready to talk about it. Tommy, who'd been quiet since Dale left, finally spoke. Mr. Marcus? My dad used to say that heroes don't wear capes. He said real heroes are the people who show up when everyone else walks away. Marcus knelt down just like he had in that parking lot an hour and a lifetime ago until he found was eye level with this 9-year-old kid who'd saved his mother with $10 and more courage than most adults carry. Your dad was right. And Tommy, you're a hero too. You did something incredibly brave tonight. You protected your mom the only way you could. That took guts. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled $10 bill that gone in. Birthday money Tommy had tried to give him in the diner. Parking lot. He pressed it back into Tommy's hand. This is yours. Buy yourself something good. You earned it. Tommy looked at the money, then at Marcus, then threw his arms around this giant of a man who'd answered a desperate plea without hesitation. Marcus hugged him back, gentle, protective, the way Tommy's father probably would have. As the Redeemer's MC prepared to leave, Sarah stood at her door with her new keys, in her house, without Dale Hoffman's truck in the driveway, and watched 7 men mount 7 motorcycles. She'd started this day afraid in her own home. She'd end it with a community she didn't know she could have. Marcus started his engine last. Before putting on his helmet, he looked back at Sarah and Tommy standing on the porch, wrapped in blankets and each other, and he nodded. Just once. A simple gesture that said, "You're going to be okay. We've got you." 7 engines roared to life, and the sound that had been terrifying in a diner parking lot was now the sweetest symphony Sarah Parker had ever heard. It was the sound of protection, of justice, of people who gave a damn when the system didn't move fast enough. The motorcycles disappeared around the way, quit massed on 7 Timons on corner, but the safety they'd created remained. Sarah locked her new locks, checked twice, and for the first time in 3 months, she and Tommy slept through the night without listening for the sound of Dale's truck in the driveway. The next morning, Sarah woke up to find a security system being installed, just like Wrench had promised. That afternoon, Nomad's sister stopped by with paperwork for the protective order and information about counseling services. By the end of the week, the house felt like a home again. And every few days, like clockwork, a motorcycle would roll slowly past number 42 Maple Drive. Different rider each time, different bike, but always a member of the Redeemer's MC, just checking in, making sure everything was good, making sure Sarah and Tommy Parker knew they weren't alone anymore. 3 weeks after that Friday night, I got a message from Marcus. It was a photo Sarah and Tommy standing in front of their house, smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smiles that reach your eyes and mean something. Tommy was wearing new clothes that actually fit. Sarah's wrist had healed, and behind them, you could see the security cameras Wrench had installed, the new lock on the door, and something else, a small American flag flying from the porch, honoring the Marine who wasn't there but whose legacy had somehow brought protection when his family needed it most. The message said, "Kid wants to learn to ride someday. Told him when he's old enough, we'll teach him." Sarah's doing good. Started therapy, got a promotion at work. Dale violated the restraining order, once called from a blocked number. Deputy Chen arrested him. He won't be trying. Again. That's the thing about stories like Mated. This. They don't always end with perfect healing. Sarah still has hard days. Tommy still misses his dad. The trauma doesn't disappear because 7 bikers showed up on a Friday night. But what changed was this. They weren't facing it alone anymore. They had a community. They had people who showed up. They had proof that asking for help, even from the unlikeliest sources, can save your life. See, here's what society gets wrong about people like the Redeemer's MC. They look at the leather, the tattoos, the motorcycles, the club patches, and they see danger. They see outlaws. They see people to avoid. But Tommy Parker looked at those same things and saw something different. He saw strength that could be borrowed. He saw men who didn't need permission from a system to do what was right. He saw heroes who didn't wear badges or capes but showed up anyway because that's what honor demands. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Heroes don't always look like we expect them to. Sometimes they look intimidating. Sometimes they make society uncomfortable. Sometimes they operate in the margins because that's where the people who need help have fallen. The Redeemer's MC didn't save Sarah and Tommy because it was convenient or because there was something in it for them. They did it because a 9-year-old boy had the courage to ask, and because decent people don't turn away when someone's drowning. Tommy spent his $10 on a model motorcycle kit. He's building it in his room, painting it black with a phoenix on the side. His mom asked him why a phoenix, and he said, "Because Mr. Marcus told me phoenixes rise from the ashes, and that's what we did, Mom." We rose. 9 years old, and he understands something most adults spend lifetimes trying to figure out. Redemption isn't about where you've been. It's about who shows up when you need them most. It's about second chances and chosen family, and the understanding that sometimes the scariest looking people are scary for a reason, because they scare the things that deserve to be scared. The Redeemer's MC still rides past 42 Maple Drive every few days, still checks in, still makes sure Sarah and Tommy know they're not alone, because that's what family does. And family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up in the parking lot when a desperate kid offers his last $10 for protection he should never have needed to buy. So the next time you see someone who looks dangerous, who makes you uncomfortable, who doesn't fit society's definition of hero, remember Tommy Parker. Remember that sometimes the most intimidating people become the fiercest protectors. Remember that strength isn't always gentle on the surface, but that doesn't mean it can't be gentle where it counts. The Redeemer's MC has a motto stitched into their vests. Right below the phoenix, "We rise for those who can't." And on a Friday night in late September, they proved it. 7 men on 7 motorcycles answered the plea of one small boy and changed 2 lives forever. Sometimes heroes wear leather. Sometimes they have tattoos and scars and histories that aren't spotless. Sometimes they ride motorcycles that rumble like thunder and look like they could tear the world apart. And sometimes when it matters most, they use all that power to protect the tunnel's positive Levin, vulnerable instead of becoming another predator. That's not just redemption. That's what humanity looks like when it works the way it should. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's given up on heroes. Share it with someone who's forgotten that good people still exist in this world. And remember, strength isn't just about how much you can lift or how hard you can. It's about what you do with that strength when someone weaker needs it. Until next time, ride safe and never be afraid to ask for help. You never know who's waiting to answer.